But on the Big Sci-Fi podcast, we cover the science fiction universe from one end to the other. We're incredibly Star Trek heavy, but we're not Trek exclusive. On each episode, we will usually cover a topic or a movie or possibly even a Star Trek episode or series. And we have interviews sometimes. We have interviewed several Trek guests or several Trek actors. We've interviewed some folks who do the design work and makeup, all those kinds of things. And sometimes our guests are also not always Trek, but we have had several Trek actors on the show. And it's just so much fun because it's like I'm getting together with like my three really good friends to talk about things we would just normally talk about. And it's wonderful.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are getting off the Bruce train today, but I'm sure he will come up as he often does. And we're talking not robots, but other science fiction with my repeat guest, Adeena. Adeena, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me back.
Yeah. So in case someone missed, the last time she was here, we just looked, was October 21st, 2021. Tell us a little about yourself.
Oh my gosh. I'm a science fiction author, and I now often lead off with that. I used to lead off with I'm an engineer because I am an engineer by day working in the aerospace industry. But I like to now say I'm a science fiction author and also an engineer working in the aerospace industry by day. But the science fiction is maybe a little bit more fun. Maybe.
Yes.
Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess you could always have led with that. But after multiple books under your belt, you must feel a little more confident saying, yeah, I'm a published
I don't feel
writer.
like, yes, I'm a published writer. I have days where I still feel like that imposter because I haven't won a Hugo Award or a Nebula Award or anything like that. But no, I have 4 books that are doing pretty well and a 5th one that's coming out in January. So yeah, I'm not just a one-off, not a one-hit wonder.
There are many people that have never published even one book, so you are ahead of that. But
that
yes,
is true.
I absolutely.
Yeah.
The last time we talked, you were in the middle of your robot trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
So remind people a little bit about that series of books.
So yes, the series is the Robot Galaxy series, and it's a trilogy in 4 parts. So there are 4 books in the series, starting with Crazy Foolish Robots, then it's Robots Everywhere, Silly Insane Humans, and 11 Little Robots. And it's a journey that takes my main character, Ruby Palmer. She's a 19-year-old female who lives out on a space station in the asteroid belt. She gets kidnapped by alien robots and winds up helping them with their glitches and their problems. And they go on fun adventures together.
Yeah, I really loved the trilogy that's in 4 books because that's how you roll. Your day job is all about rules and following the principles of science. In fiction, a trilogy can be 4 books.
It could be whatever we want it to be. Yes.
Absolutely. I absolutely adored the storyline. It is difficult to, I think, giving the robots the personalities that you did really well. I like the idea that she was able to figure out, and the other premise you need to know is that our main character can't stand artificial intelligence or robots at first, but then later came around, which I think is, if we want to get deep for a moment, I think it's easy to dislike, aka hate, things we don't know.
Yeah,
and then
that's true.
as you get to know, it is tougher and tougher to have that disdain, that hate. And I think that's one of the messages of the book, and also to have a lot of fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was definitely thinking of the fun first.
Yes.
Any other deep messages were second, but yes.
As the beauty of literature, the beauty of songs, is that the listener, the reader, is just as valid as the writer or the musician, because you put it out there And then if someone takes it a different way, you can, well, I didn't mean that, but
Mhm.
okay, yeah, I see that.
Yeah, oh,
So yeah,
yeah, and yes, I definitely believe that art in all of its forms is in the eye of the viewer, listener, any of that. So I am more than happy for people to take what I've written and read it and, think of whatever they wanna think of and everything. If I had any purpose in that, or if I was intentional, and there's some intention there, it's really that what I like about science fiction is it can open up people's mind to what is possible in the real world, meaning, and not to say that there's going to be like sentient alien robots going around our universe, but the idea is it might make you ask a question like, huh, could that be real, or what is the real basis? So I feature Titan, which is a moon of Saturn, and maybe just even mentioning it or the little bits I have in it might get someone to think about, huh, I wonder about Titan in real life. What
yeah,
is that? And how are we exploring that planet? And those are the kind of things that I would say is a little bit deliberate in the sense that I would love for people, especially younger people. This is written for adults, but it's accessible to the younger set. And I would love for a high school student to be reading my stuff and it be like, hey, I have all these questions now about science and computers and astronomy, and it actually gets them interested. So that's where the intention is. But other than that, yes, it is absolutely however people want to interpret it is cool with me. The fact that
mhm,
they're reading it and talking about it and interpreting and thinking about it, I'm thrilled.
yeah, absolutely. You do have a new book coming
Mhm.
out shortly, right?
Yep.
So talk to
Yes.
me a little bit about it.
And you can see I have this is
Yeah.
my author proof copy that just came.
Ooh.
And as you can see, there's like a lot of little tabbies that I put because I'm, of course, reviewing it to make sure there's
Yeah.
no typos and things. And okay, there are, of course, still a few typos, but what's frustrating is then as I'm rereading it, some of these little marks are not typos, but oh, I really want to change a word here, want to change a word there. So, yes, but it's coming out in January. It's called Lunar Logic, and it is about we'll call him a sentient android named Aiden. And there are a few others, Aiko and Aiken and Amory, and they all live on the moon about 100 years from now or so. And in their life, they've just got like a nice little life. They are doing stuff on the moon and they don't know about humans. They're doing their thing. They're taking care of equipment that's on the moon. They don't really know why. And well, then there's some mysteries, there's little clues that get left, and they start questioning what's really going on. And if any, and this is meant to also be light in the sense of there's no deep violence or anything like that. But this one, it was very deliberately meant to be philosophical.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Why the change of pace? Why did you want to use different muscles this time?
That's interesting. So this is a standalone book that has nothing to do with the other series. And I wrote this starting as a NaNoWriMo project, actually in 2020.
Okay.
And it just started out as there to be, I wanted it to involve the moon. And of course, I wanted it to involve robots just because I love robots. But the funny thing is, when I first wrote it, it was actually quite dark and there was violence and cursing, and it was much heavier. But after working on the Robot Galaxy series and having this voice of lighterness and not being so, when I was rewriting Lunar Logic, I lightened it all up because I think it's working for me.
Okay. Yeah. I think we talked about this last time, but
Mhm.
my good friend Tom Zoller had done Love and Capes, which is a collection of comic books he ended up publishing. They collected as graphic novels,
Mhm.
but basically a superhero romantic comedy. And so he was trying to go and try to write something else. And he got advice like, you've built a brand, and that's not necessarily a bad thing to keep pushing that brand. I'm not
Mhm.
saying you have to do exactly the same thing, but if you want to be careful about shocking your audience like, oh, I'm used to light romantic,
Mhm.
and then holy moly, where did this dark depressing
Mhm.
thing come from? Though I'm sure sometime you will have that desire and you go, okay, I'm going to do something a little different.
Yeah, and actually my short science fiction stories are tend to be a little heavier and a little
Okay.
darker, definitely. And it wasn't so much just about a brand so much as I just want to be I don't
Okay.
want to there's enough dark and dismal stuff. There's enough out there and in life that I just decided I really just didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But some of my short stories still have a little bit more of a darker tone, excuse me, to them. But a lot of times authors, that's when they'll write under a pen name is to
Yes.
separate those voices. I have a science fiction writer friend of mine. She's writing romance under a pen name just to completely separate,
Yeah.
have that separation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. So the I think we talked about this last time, but I'd like to dwell more. You mentioned a little bit growing up, were you a reader?
Hmm.
Okay. And
I,
you read science fiction mostly or a
yes.
little bit
Well,
everything?
I was a reader in some ways. I think I didn't read as much as I did as an adult, more because there was playing outside, there was
Yeah.
TV, there were just other things to do. So I don't think I read as much as uh, what I would consider a reader or what I would consider as an adult. But yes, I definitely read books. I do have tons of memories of spending a lot of time in my local library because my dad was a heavy reader. We'd be at the library a lot. I remember having books. I do remember reading books, although I remember actually taking out a lot of art books. I have this
Hmm.
memory of this one method of art style that like I kept getting those books out like over and over.
Why those?
I do have a little arts and crafty side, and so I'm sure that there's something to do with that. I'm sure it was something to do with my parents weren't buying us those books, so if I wanted them, they were coming from
Yeah.
the library. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. All right. The you I'm going to ask you to change your cap for a minute. You're also a
Mhm.
podcast host.
I am
So,
now. I wasn't last
yes.
time we
Yes, you
talked.
were. And so talk to
Yes.
me a little bit about the podcast.
Yes. Yes. So I am a co-host of the Big Sci-Fi podcast. And we started it at the beginning of 2000. What year is this? 2023. We started at the beginning of 2022, right at the beginning of.
Right.
And the funny thing is, a few months before, and you might have even asked me this because I know at the time I'd been asked
Yeah.
several times, would you ever start a podcast? And I was like, no, no, probably not. But one thing led to another, and I met this group of guys, and things gelled. And together, we're doing the podcast, which is different and not something I had previously envisioned before. So I met these three guys, my co-hosts Brian, Steve, and Chris. We're all huge Star Trek fans and huge science fiction fans. And like I said, it just gelled, and we do the Big Sci-Fi podcast now.
Yeah. Is it just because you were spending time talking to them and you guys said, this could be a fun podcast?
What happened was we met because we were all writing some articles for a Star Trek fan website. And the person who ran that wanted to do some podcasting. And at some point, some group of like in different combinations of us, we had recorded a little bit and we all enjoyed the experience and thought it would continue. But one by one, we all wound up at odds with the person who ran that particular site and things fell apart there. But then the four of us were like, but we still want a podcast. So we got together and just created our own thing.
Mhm. So give if you have
Hmm.
a elevator pitch for the podcast, please share it.
Oh, sure, sure. I'm coming up with this on the top of my head. I should probably have something prepared. But
I
on the
get
Big
it.
Sci-Fi podcast, we cover the science fiction universe from one end to the other. We're incredibly Star Trek heavy, but we're not Trek exclusive. On each episode, we will usually cover a topic or a movie or possibly even a Star Trek episode or series. And we have interviews sometimes. We have interviewed several Trek guests or several Trek actors. We've interviewed some folks who do the design work and makeup, all the kinds of those kinds of things. And sometimes our guests are also not always Trek, but we have had several Trek actors on the show. And it's just so much fun because it's like I'm getting together with like my three really good friends to talk about things we would just normally talk about. And it's wonderful.
what have you learned doing the podcast? What has surprised you about the podcast? And I guess that could be two different
Hmm.
questions, but yes.
That's yeah, there's a lot of ways I can interpret that because of course I could just the concept of podcasting in general. And especially now that we've been doing it almost 2 years and we put out episodes weekly. And the way we do it is we have seasons and it's really just to give us a break in between. So we'll do about a 20 or so episode season and then have about a month off where we actually have some other recorded content we do in that month. And so now that we're hitting our 2 year mark, I'm on several Facebook groups for podcasters and watching other folks who now are just coming in brand new. It really is watching them learn. It's, oh wow, I guess I was there at the very beginning and now I've been doing this 2 years. I'm like the old experienced one because most podcasts don't last past people throw up a few episodes. They get very discouraged when no one listens and then they give up. And it really is like a slow and steady wins the race. Not that it's a race or anything, but you really do have to keep going. You can't just be discouraged if no one listens to your first 2 or 3 episodes. That's not what this is about. You have to have some staying power. So there's
My
all
Yeah, go ahead.
that. I
Yeah,
was gonna say there's that
yeah.
aspect of learning.
Yeah, one of the things that when people talk to me, Terry Smith, who does the really great Music Talks podcast, which the premise is you pick a song from every decade you've been alive, and then they use that as a way to explore your life.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a wonderful podcast, and what's open. If I was born in 59, so I had to pick a song for the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s
Hmm.
on. And a whole decade is a lot of songs to pick
Hmm.
from. And what is your thought process? But he attended a session right before he started, and they said that most podcasts don't get past 7 episodes.
I believe that.
And so when people talk to me, I say, first off, make sure it's a broad enough subject that you're not going to run out of things to talk about.
Hmm.
Secondly, have multiple episodes in the bank before you start
Hmm.
releasing
Yep.
because you don't want to be under that constraint. And
Hmm.
three, make sure it's something you're going to talk about even if no one listens.
Yep. Yes. And I think for me and Brian and Chris and Steve, that all hits. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to do science fiction, not just Star Trek, because we
Yeah.
didn't want to just be limited. And there are a lot of Star Trek podcasts out there. But yeah, we would just sit around and talk about this no matter what. And that's
Yeah.
so what we do.
Yeah.
Yes.
One of my podcasts is a Babylon 5 rewatch. Karen and Lou have never seen Babylon 5.
Mm.
I've seen it multiple times. And what's I think funny is my first podcast was with them. It was a Farscape podcast. They had
Hmm.
seen all of Farscape. I had never seen it. So I was the newbie and we went through each episode and now
Hmm.
we flip things. And our downloads are minuscule,
Hmm.
minuscule. But we don't care because
Hmm.
just every Sunday at 10 a.m., the three of us get together and we talk either Babylon 5 and then we just did a rewatch. None of us had seen 12 Monkeys, the
Okay.
sci-fi series.
Yep. Hmm.
And so we watched that for the first time and discussed 2 or 3 episodes at a time. And we don't care if anyone listens. This is
Hmm.
just our little fun Sunday morning get together. And I think that's really important
Yes.
because
Yeah.
this should be for fun.
Yes. Yep. And
Yeah.
we definitely, me and my co-host, we do have a lot of fun. And that's one of the things that makes it work because we are having fun. And yeah, we take turns, like each one of us hosting an episode where we take turns in who gets to set the agenda or what the topic is, whether again, it's a movie, an episode, a series, something, whatever it happens to be. And it could be a Star Trek episode or movie. It could be something else in science fiction. Sometimes we are borderline almost not science fiction. Like we did talk about the Lord of the Rings once. We did Ghostbusters recently, the original Ghostbusters, which is that science fiction or no?
Yeah.
Again, but yeah, we take turns picking and making our co-hosts watch it if they hadn't.
Yes. That's exactly what Lou and Karen and I do. Lou and I had not seen Devs.
Hmm.
And so we watched that for Karen. And
Hmm.
neither one of them have seen the HBO Watchmen series. So
Mhm.
that's going to be next, our thing. A recent episode I adored is, and I'm going to get his name wrong, John Scalzi, the
John
red shirts.
Scalzi.
Yeah, Scalzi. What
Yes.
a fascinating guy.
Oh my gosh. That was having him as a guest on our show totally for me a dream. He is my favorite. I think I said this, I was gushing. He is
Yeah.
my favorite contemporary living science fiction author right now. And oh, I was so happy to get the opportunity to meet him. I met him at Balticon, was a convention in Baltimore
Yeah.
back in May, and got to see him again at the National Book Festival. And yeah, I asked him, was able to book him on the show, especially it coincided with him doing a book tour for his most recent book, Starter Villain, which is really cute and fun.
Oh,
But yeah, that was a dream. I was so, yeah. So sometimes it's literary. We talk
yeah.
to folks who are in the literary sci-fi. So we cover all ends of sci-fi, all of it.
Starter Villain was so good. The first thing they did, which I think is brilliant, is there was an introduction. Like you could
Hmm.
download the first chapter or two for free
Hmm.
before publication date. And I had got it and I immediately signed up to get it immediately. And it was so well done. It was so
Hmm.
clever. It was so funny. I have really kind thoughts about him because I was in the hospital in 2015. I had been diagnosed with colon cancer. So I was
Mm.
spending time in the hospital. And I had picked up Red Shirts on my Kindle sometime
Hmm.
and just had never taken time to read it. And I remember this is a good night. I was by myself in the hospital and I remember just pouring through it.
Yeah,
I'm like,
I love Red Shirt so much.
this is it was such a clever take on a Star Trek trope
Hmm.
that made it so much fun.
Yep.
So let's spend a few minutes. What are your thoughts on? We just finished Lower Decks as we're recording
Hmm.
this. Are you guys fans?
Oh yeah. Yep. I'm 100%, 1000% in the lower decks camp. Now, not all of my co-hosts are,
Yeah.
although we're working on them. I'm working slowly but surely. But one of the reasons lower decks is just fun. And I like just things that are fun, even if especially it's done with love. The people who
Yes.
are creating lower decks, they are deep Star Trek fans. So it's done out of that kind of love and respect. But one of the funnest things about it is I'm watching it with my 13-year-old. He likes it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a great excuse. It's perfect for me to drag him into the rest of the Star Trek franchise. And because they'll have references or inside jokes. And I'm like, oh God, sweetie, you have to watch this episode and this episode. And then he will, and he will.
Yeah.
So I'll say right before the recent season finale, we watched First Duty Next
Yeah.
Generation episode, and then we watched Lower Decks Next Generation episode. And
Right.
then when we watched it after the penultimate season finale episode, I made him watch those. And then when especially the opening scene of the finale came on, I looked at him. I'm like, now you're glad I made you watch those. He's, yep.
Yeah. I know that there are a couple of podcasts out there that admit to be grumpy old Star Trek fans
Hmm.
who are not happy with Strange New Worlds. I throw my credibility out. I remember watching the original Star Trek with my dad when it first came out. I
Hmm.
spent every afternoon coming home from school. I just love Strange New Worlds. I
Hmm.
love the idea of expanding these characters and doing
Yes.
more with it. Yeah.
Yep. There's a few moments and, of course, nits that I
Yeah.
would complain about. But no, overall, I love the concept. I love that they're doing it. And what was really interesting is at the beginning of season 2, first couple episodes, I was like, this seems weird. We're not seeing enough Pike. It was a
Yeah.
little weird. But then, because we were going to, for our podcast, do like a season 2 recap, preparing for that, I watched season 1 and 2 continuously. And watching the 2 seasons put together like that really was a whole different experience. And I think I think when you do episodic television, especially episodic television with some background arcs, it's meant to be 20 episodes, not 10. So
Yes.
it felt much better and it felt right in that context. But yeah, I'm generally loving it. I love all Star Trek. I have
Yeah.
nits with all of it, but I love it all.
Yeah, I agree too. There are times when I will roll my eyes or go, but overall, I guess I'm about stories. And
Hmm.
if I have to choose between a good story and staying to canon, I want a good story.
Yeah.
To hell with canon. I'm
Yeah.
okay with it,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm. I'm generally okay with that too, especially taking into context when the original series came out,
Yeah,
it was just a series. Then there was no one envisioned what it was going to turn into. So you
right.
have to take a little give it a little leeway and be like, they didn't prepare for this 50 years ago. So I'm okay with some of the little breaks in canon. I would say that my biggest complaint about Strange New Worlds is the fact that they are giving James T. Kirk too much time on that show. I was like, having Spock there, having a horror there, even introducing some other character. I don't know how spoily we
Yeah,
can
we
be
can
here,
be.
but I feel like they're just doing too much Kirk. And this is supposed to be Pike and his ship.
Yeah.
Let's see more Pike. Let's see more Erica Ortegas because she hasn't had her episode yet. We
Yeah.
haven't really gotten her backstory yet. But no, as a whole, I am so happy.
Yeah, I think that's a fair feedback and I always go back to Penn Jillette told the story that people will come to him, especially when they were doing the BS bullshit series, right?
Hmm.
You should do an expose on blank. And he
Hmm.
says, "You're right. That would be a good expose. You should do that. Go do it." I would watch that
Right.
show. The idea that if you want to see something, go create it yourself
Hmm.
versus trying to tell a creative person, here's what I want you to go. And that's like going to you. Like, what I really want you to do is I want you to do a romance story. Okay, go do a romance story of
Hmm.
robots. You do it. But that isn't
Right.
necessarily what I want to do.
Right.
Mm,
I get that.
yeah, absolutely. What is there? Are there people you are still working on to get to on the podcast that are on your wish list?
Oh, yes. There's of course in the Trek universe, there's a lot of people.
Sure.
Unfortunately, this we had a few guests book that we had to temporarily postpone because of the strike.
Yeah.
Because while we would gladly talk to them, it'd be hard to talk to them without talking about Star Trek. So
Yes.
we've postponed. And a lot of the ways I wind up meeting these folks are at Star Trek conventions and make contact and everything. And there's several coming up. So I hopefully will
Hmm.
meet some more folks and we'll get some others. But I would say everyone in the Star Trek universe, I'd happily talk to. There's
Yeah.
also several people in the Star Wars franchise I would love to talk to. There are oh, you mentioned Babylon 5. I'd love to talk to J. Michael Straczynski if he's
Yeah.
talkable. So
Yeah.
there's other people too, for sure.
Sure.
There's other literary people I want to talk to. There's one gentleman, I don't want to say who yet
Yeah.
because I'm still keeping my fingers crossed.
Yeah.
But at the time I contacted him, it was a bad time. He said contact him
Yeah.
again at some point. So
That's good.
yeah.
I would be interested in you guys talking to Robin Asimov because she's
Mm,
taken on her father's legacy.
I hadn't considered that. I am writing that down on my homework list right now.
because
Don't
she
know
was
why I wouldn't have thought of that.
because she was involved at least a little bit in the Foundation Apple series, and
Hmm.
she
Which I'm
seems
working my way through right now.
yeah, it's really well done. It's not it and once again, I'm okay with it doesn't have to be a literal translation for me, right? If
Hmm.
it's a good story, I'm happy with it. And I think that's been a really lot of fun. So yeah,
Hmm.
mm, yeah, I will be first in line to watch that. Just
Yeah.
I imagine her having that legacy of her father and just because I remember last time you and I both talked about how much we loved Isaac's books. And by the
Hmm.
way, I went and bought a couple on Kindle after our last discussion to
Yeah.
revisit. Yeah, you inspired me to go like
Awesome.
maybe I should read Caves of Steel again.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's
Well,
so good.
I want to reread Foundation because it's been like so long. I'm
Yeah,
watching the show and I'm like, "Mm." But I like to think, and it would be interesting to talk to Robin Asimov about this. I like to think that Isaac Asimov himself would have been very happy with how this turned out. Because I don't think he was the kind of person who is married to the, oh my God, you didn't get my stuff perfect. I don't think he was that guy
No.
at all. So I think he would have been very happy with what is showing up on the screen, especially because those books were written before. Yeah, the show obviously takes into account today's technology and what we are capable of doing and visualizing on the screen, which when he wrote Foundation and the way he described things is coming out of a different era. So I think he would have been happy with how they did things, and I think the characterizations are great. Um, I think he would have been overall very happy.
Yeah, I think Lee Pace is amazing. And the whole premise that wasn't in the books, the idea that the emperor is always a clone of himself, that
Hmm.
that you are you have the same ruler, and there's always the young, prime,
Yep,
senior, and that rotation
the
is a
dawn,
very,
day, and dusk. Yeah.
yeah, a very clever
Hmm.
thought. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't remember when we talked last. Were you doing conventions then, or is this a fairly new thing for you? And
Let's
new,
see.
but since 21.
I think I had just started. So as an attendee,
Yes.
I attended when I was in high school. I went to every single Star Trek convention that occurred in New York City.
Yeah.
But then I didn't, as a young adult, just because of lacking money and then getting my career, I just didn't do a lot of that. And before these books came out, I had gone to one as an attendee. I met Tim Russ and Garrett Wang there, and it happened to be my birthday. It was 2019. But yeah, I think it was around October that year when I talked to you that I started going then as a speaker.
Hmm.
And now that's my primary mode, is to go and do some form of speaking, whether I'm representing as a science person or as an author. And at different conventions, you'll find me in one or either or both roles.
Hmm.
At one that's coming up next, the very end of May, the weekend that straddles May and June, is Trek Long Island. And I'll be there as a science guest, as an author, and the Big Sci-Fi podcast will all be there. So got a lot going on with that one.
That'll be fine. And how, I assume you have a table and you're selling books, and talk to me about interacting with fans.
Oh, it's great, especially when I don't know them. Meaning
Yes.
these are people who they are actually fans, and it's a really interesting, new, unique experience. Most of these, I do wind up talking on the science, either on the science panels or giving a science talk.
Hmm.
And what I really do love is the engagement at the end. And that's how I know, to me, at least that's a sign that I've done a good job, is if they've got tons of questions, enough so that when I'm even getting the hook to be pulled off stage, they still want to talk and have questions. And I always try to gear my talks a little bit for thinking along the lines of either the people in the audience either are someone thinking about their career, like they might be high school or college students, or someone in their life, like a child or niece or nephew, is at that stage. And so I'm always giving a little, hey, if you want career in this stuff, things. And I've had a lot of people at the end of their talks come to me and tell me how interesting it was from that perspective. They didn't know what they wanted to do, or they think their niece was, this is a possible thing for them. I love that, because that's one of the reasons why I do like to be a STEM speaker, is to get people excited about aerospace and engineering and all the various career possibilities that are out there that are related.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you've been able to combine your two careers as such, right?
Hmm.
As being an advocate for science, which I think is so important nowadays. I know we talked about this because in 21, we were just starting to get out of the pandemic, and the disdain that people had for science, to a certain degree. And you've been able to do that. And also, you flip your hats and you are a writer and
Hmm.
enjoying that. So I think that's got to be very satisfying,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I feel like they fuel each other in general. Science fiction puts ideas into the heads, and that's why people go into science. It's clearly why I went into engineering, was because I was a fan of Star Wars and Star Trek, got me interested in robots and space exploration. And then that kind of promotes ideas that feed back into newer science fiction, especially again, what's happening with all the generative AI. There's a lot of ideas of how do you propagate that into the future in ways that are creative and interesting. And it's funny because the new book, Lunar Logic, that's coming out, I wrote the bulk of that before any of this generative AI stuff had hit the scene. But you could think about how I might have extrapolated from that because it fits. It still fits. It's funny. It was completely unintentional, but it does. And I think we'll see a lot of interesting. It just expands the mind.
Yeah. One of the things that is both fascinating and scary is one of the things that Zoom does now is it emails me a summary of this
Mm-hmm.
meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's really wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but most times it's pretty damn close. I will email you the afterwards so you can
Sure.
see. And that's cool. And for me, it's really nice when I'm trying to publish the episode, I'm trying to write a summary
Mm-hmm.
and do that. But it's also just a little scary.
So I don't find, again, knowing and understanding a little bit about what's happening under the hood, I don't find it
Okay. Oh,
the least
good.
bit scary.
Please.
No, because
Good.
it really is. It's a statistical model that is really all it is. Now, there's been some ethical concerns about how did they grab this data, all that, which, yep, I can understand how that's concerning. But no, the fundamental technology to me is not scary. And add on, go back and watch Star Trek episodes where they interact with the holodeck or any interaction with the computer. And in order to get there, you do need the ability to truly interact with your computer system in a natural language way. That's what they're doing.
Yeah.
So if you want to, in a positive, we like to think about a Star Trek future and all the technology. This is a step to having those kinds of things available.
And right, it is Alexa play the big sci-fi
Mm-hmm.
podcast is just one step forward to turn off my lights, whatever you want, the smart
Mm-hmm.
house. So yeah, that's a good point.
There was an episode on Star Trek The Next Generation called Schisms.
Okay.
And in that episode, several of the characters are having these nightmares or not sleeping and everything. So Deanna Troi takes them into the holodeck and they are collectively recreating what they feel they experienced. But the interesting part about that is how they interact with the computer in the holodeck to generate the scene. So now think about what we're using words to generate images in like Midjourney or DALL-E or whatever. So what they're doing in the holodeck is, hey, I want a table. No, it needs to be a bigger table. It's a metal table. It's an angled table. And then the next person comes along and says, no, it's more, there's a chair or there's something going across it. That's exactly what they're doing. Like that is what they're doing is they're using their natural language and it is essentially like a generative AI predictive thing. The computer is taking what they say and using its correlated data to give it what they're asking for. It's in Star Trek already. And if we want that kind of thing, the hurdles that we're going to have to get over in the near term is that the ethical ish parts about it. Where did the data come from? How do we use it? And again, like any technology, a person can use the technology for good. They can use the technology for evil. So there'll be some growing pains with it, like there is with any other technology.
Yeah. I by nature am pretty optimistic. So same for you?
Yep. I would say so, especially when it comes to that kind of stuff. Yes.
Yeah. I had Leah Elson on the podcast this summer, who is she does a science podcast and a science book. And we talked about, so why do you think that there is this small but loud minority of people who are against science, against facts, to be just very blunt?
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I know. Part of that is because I don't know if I know those people in real life, given who I normally interact with on a day-to-day basis, which are a lot of like my coworkers, so other engineers and science folks. I don't know if I really know these people. So without knowing them, I don't know where they're coming from. So all I
Okay.
could do is guess
Okay.
and something in their experience, something that they were taught. Are they trying to exert control? But it's all complete speculation and guess on my part.
Okay. Yeah, I get that. I just was just curious if you
Yeah.
had any thoughts.
Yeah.
So, what's next for you creatively? Where do you want to go now?
Okay. I am working actively on writing more in the Robot Galaxy universe.
Yay.
Because as I was finishing up book 4, I thought that was going to be it. Because I do have other things I want to write. But as I was finishing up the 4th book, I'm like, I'm not done here. I want to do more. I love these characters. I like this universe a lot. So then I'm working on the next set of 4 books, and I'm calling it a set, not a series, because they'll be able to be read in any order. And it's what happens to several of the characters, and it gives them their own story after the 4th book concludes. And I'm calling it the T set because the 4 books are going to be called T is for Trajectory, T is for Titan, T is for Toilet, and T is for Time Travel. And right now, because this happens to be the NaNoWriMo month,
Yeah.
I'm working actively on T is for Time Travel. As of this morning, I have just under 14,000 words on it. So yeah, I'm madly working on those.
Sign me up. I'm sold right here and there. I think that's perfect. That's nice. What are you reading or what are you watching now?
Okay, watching, I am in working my way through Foundation. That is, I call it my treadmill show,
Okay.
meaning I'm only allowed to watch it while I'm on my treadmill. And I
Nice.
try to pick a show that I really want to watch. So it motivates me to get on my treadmill every day. And Foundation's
Nice.
doing it right now. So that I also watch a little, I do sometimes watch things that are not science fiction.
Sure.
And because I have Apple TV, I'm watching the morning show, the Jennifer Aniston and Reese
Sure.
Witherspoon,
Great. Yeah.
which is, it's disturbing, but it's done so well.
It is
It's very
really done well.
compelling.
Yes.
So there's that. As for reading, oh, so because working on so I'm working on T is for Time Travel. And so this is my little spoiler. Oh, is
Mhm.
the one of the characters that I'm featuring. His name is Leonardo da Pisa, also
Okay.
known as Leonardo Pisano, also known as Fibonacci.
Ah.
So I've been reading some books about and by Fibonacci, which is some heavier, like not heavy, like depressing. It's just like
Yeah.
me.
It's very
Uh,
meaty.
it's very meaty. But I really wanted to study as much as I can about the real guy. Not that there's a lot there to study. Actually, it's very interesting. There's a lot that is not known, which is good and bad.
Hmm.
It's good because I think I have a lot of leeway to make him who I want to be. But also, it's like I wish there was a little more
Hmm.
here. But so I've just been through a bunch of that. That's been the big thing. But
Okay.
just before that, I did read Sir Patrick Stewart's autobiography.
Yes. It's
And
on
by
my.
read, I meant listen to him
Yeah.
narrate the audiobook. Yeah.
Yeah. It is on my to read list.
Hmm.
I don't remember if we talked last time for All Mankind, since you mentioned Apple TV.
Hmm.
I just love that series. I
So I'm
just,
in the middle of that too. So it is also amazing. So the reason why I'm not all caught up is because we only got Apple TV recently, just because there's so many services
sure,
and
absolutely. Yeah.
and I got it. What did I? Oh, I got it for Silo.
Yeah.
When Silo finally came out is why I got it. And so I've been catching up on all these other shows.
I thought Silo was really well done.
Oh yes, I really loved how that. Yes, I'm very happy with Silo. But for All Mankind now, it's the show I have to watch with my husband. And it's just that's even worse than a treadmill show because getting us to align where we're both ready to sit down and watch. So so I'm still behind, but it is, especially being in the industry, it's eerie how this really could have been an alternate reality. It's really well done. It's freaky.
Yeah, one of the things that I enjoy, and for those of you who may not have watched, the premise is the Soviet Union gets on moon first. They land on moon first, and you would think, oh, okay, but there is a domino effect that I won't spoil here, but just really changes everything.
Mhm.
And the idea of the technology of how some things were pushed forward faster
Mm-hmm.
and other things weren't developed, I
Mm-hmm.
thought was interesting. I was a big Battlestar Galactica fan. I was a big Ron Moore. I love Outlander. And so I love the idea that this changes things. There's enough to change in the world that it's just a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. And just it's amazing how I really feel like as they developed again in this alternate
Yeah.
reality, just how it really still felt plausible
Yes.
given their circumstance. The big key difference between the way they are in reality is their version of NASA, how NASA evolved. They were much more willing to take risk than we are,
Yes.
and that's a amazing, makes amazing differences. But that's to me the biggest difference between that. But other than that, the technology and the evolution of the technology, it's very well researched, very well
Good.
done.
I know because I had a buddy, I still do, that served 2 tours in as a submariner. And
Mm-hmm.
he can't watch any submarine movie because he just wrong and he gets out of the story. They're able to not get you out of the story then.
Yeah, no, there's again, if I want to find the nits, I
Yes,
can. But no,
absolutely.
they're definitely not enough. It's not glaringly like in your face. No, they're there. But I don't want to look for them because I want to enjoy. I don't want to
Yes.
be taken out of the story.
Yeah, there was, speaking of podcasts, so there was, I'm a big Doctor Who fan, and there was a podcast that I was listening to, and they kept complaining about the newest episodes.
Mm,
And I ended up, I don't want to listen to this. And why do you still want to talk about it? If you're
yeah,
that unhappy with the show, then stop watching. I don't want to do that. So
I get
yeah,
that. I
yeah,
get that.
absolutely. And as you said, that doesn't mean you can't say this episode didn't work for me or I'm not
Hmm.
sure about the decision, but still overall can
Hmm.
enjoy.
Yes. Yes.
This was so much fun catching up. I'm so
Yeah.
happy. Yeah. Lunar Logic,
Hmm.
it is due out. I pre-ordered it, but
Yay.
it is due the middle of January.
Hmm.
And
And right now you can find it on Amazon and Goodreads, but it
yes,
will be available on my store too. You could get it directly from me. It will be,
good.
yeah.
And the robots, the convenient 4 episode trilogy, 4 book trilogy. I have purchased them all. I love them all.
Aw,
I
thank
just
you.
really enjoyed spending time with the characters and spending time in this world. It was a joy.
Thank
And
you.
thank you so much for your time tonight. Any final
Oh,
thoughts
sure.
before I let you go?
No, thank you so much for having me back. We didn't talk about Bruce at all
No, we didn't. Let me ask, are you listening to any music?
because I've got kids and
Yes.
they know how to work all the musical devices. Right now, I don't get to.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm listening to music, but I'm listening to what they put on, and
Yes.
they put on the strangest. Am I getting old when I think that they put on the strangest things?
Yes. Once again, this is the second time I'm quoting Penn Jillette. He says that teenagers should not listen to classic rock. They should listen to music that their parents can't stand because that is the whole purpose of rock and roll.
They're listening to both my kids. I have a 13-year-old and 5, and they both play Minecraft. And one of the things
Okay.
they like to listen to is just like the Minecraft background music and some music that other people have created that is essentially Minecraft background music.
I am
Really?
I am shocked at the amount of people that I reach to get on the podcast that will say that is not that rare where they love listening to wrestling theme songs,
Hmm.
entrance songs for wrestling,
Hmm.
and video game music
Now,
like Final Fantasy soundtrack
yeah,
or something.
yeah.
So yeah, that's
I guess I shouldn't be too surprised because I do have a playlist which is all Star Trek instrumentals from
yeah,
the. So I guess I shouldn't be that surprised.
right, absolutely.
But yes, when where I don't get to listen to my own choices, it's rare these days.
Yeah. If you want to do, and I realize you have a lot to do, but on Apple Plus, there is a documentary of Bruce making his last studio album, Letter to You.
I think I heard about that. Yeah.
It's very well done. It talks about the new album. It talks about his feelings. One of the things that I thought was interesting, and obviously as a Bruce fan, but in the past, Bruce would record demos. And then when the band would come to record the albums, it was, okay, beat the demo, right? Bruce has already put down a track. He's already done the bass line. He's already done the thing. And one of the members said, hey, let's not do beat the demo. Let's just go in here. And so they all were sitting there with their yellow legal tablets and their pens and pencils, and Bruce would play the song that they're going to do. And then they would be writing to do their tracks and how they're doing it. So it's a really interesting documentary on the making of the album. So I think you'd enjoy it.
Yeah.
Good.
I do. I like listening, and especially I'll listen to like autobiographies by anyone. I actually recently I did more reading than I thought. I listened to one by Arnold Schwarzenegger, his recent, not an autobiography, although it had a lot of autobiographical stuff in it. But then also one that I saw it was on, it's an Audible thing, so it's not truly a book because it was just an Audible, but Dolly Parton.
Oh.
But not just about her, it was about her clothing. It was Dolly Parton Behind the Rhinestones. Ooh. And it was about her evolution related specifically to all her clothing. And not being a girly girl, you'd think, I guess I didn't know what I was getting into, but just listening to her, in her own words, that discussion, even though that's not my thing, it's still fascinating to hear. And I do love Dolly Parton. I love Dolly Parton.
Of course, who doesn't?
I know. I'm not a country fan, but I love Dolly Parton.
You got to love Dolly. One of the things that Bruce's autobiography, which is available as an audio, he talks a lot about his fight with depression, and which was, I thought, very interesting that he was that vocal about it. So I'm right there with you. I always love, and especially when it's read by the person,
them. Yes.
It feels like they're talking to you, right? They're like, hey, let me tell you the story. So that's great.
Yes.
All right. If someone wants to reach you and if someone wants to hear the podcast, what's the best way?
Okay. The Big Sci-Fi Podcast is on all the major podcast platforms. So if you just search the Big Sci-Fi Podcast, you will find us. To reach me, my website, which it's easy to abbreviate, adeenam.com. So my first name, ADENAM.com. And there's a contact form. There's links to all my books. There's everything there.
Congratulations on the series. Good luck on the new book, and congratulations on the podcast. I love listening to it. I love y'all's discussion, and let's stay in touch.
Absolutely.
All right, listeners, go check out the website, go check out the books, go check out the podcast. For now, be safe, be kind, and we'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. And we're done. Great job. Thank you.
Hey, thank you.
Yeah, that was fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, I almost talked to you. I saw you have your Central Perk show. That was.
I wasn't sure if that was going to come up or not, but yeah, I've been actually wearing this a lot this last week because I'm also a huge fan, and that's just is so sad.
It was such a loss, and I love all the posts that they pulled from his memoir that I'm going to be remembered as friends. I'm going to remember as friends, but I wish people would also remember how I tried to help people and how I tried to make a difference. There was a couple of people posted the scenes when he was on West Wing, which was brilliant.
I don't think I'd seen. I knew he was on it, but I haven't seen it.
Yeah, he plays basically a Republican that is hired for the White House, and then the good wife. He plays an absolute ass, but he's the likable, his character, but he's friendly and nice, but he also has this, he does some double dealing and everything. So yeah, I think a true
But it is
loss.
A character.
Yes, it is a
it's
character.
A character. It's not.
I loved him in Go On. That was only one season about losing the character. Yeah, I just think just a true loss. It just really just a brilliant, tortured soul, and I hope he found happiness and in the next life he's enjoying what he needs.
But no, definitely definitely huge. I actually probably rewatch Friends just as much as I rewatch Star Trek.
Yeah,
it's
that's
just I love having it on. Just
yeah. I think a lot of people are that
the,
way,
it's a comfort show.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. Have a great night. Thank you. I
You too. Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.